time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
League regular season is the hardest that I've ever been a part of, as far as how competitive every single game is. There's not an easy game, home or away. There's not a game where you just kind of show up and you're figuring out a way to win. There's not a lead that's safe, and there's not a deficit that you can't overcome. That's where this league is at right now.
Quality of competition that we're getting ready to play in these next two tournaments is going to be high. And, we've got some things that we've got to improve. And so we're working hard on that, as well as trying to prepare, for whoever we're going to play, whether it's Boston College or NC State. So taper back a little bit today and a little bit tomorrow, and then try to get ready to play really well here coming up.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, on a wet Tuesday afternoon, evening here in the Palmetto State. Hope you are nice and warm and dry wherever you happen to be. Phil Kornbluth, the Professor Tom Hayes, at our studios in downtown Columbia, along with Brian Leonard. And up in New York, where part of the story, besides the ACC tournament and everything else going on in the Big Apple, is the big winter storm, part 2, about to blow through there overnight. Another nor'easter. They're calling for 6 to 12 inches of snow in New York City, where Will Pelagic hopefully is safe and secure and away from the elements. The ACC tournament tipped off today. 2 games are in the books. 1 more to go later on this evening. Let's bring in Will from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. He's been there taking in all the action. First of all, before we talk about basketball, is this storm going to be an issue for the tournament?
I don't think so, Corn. The thing about where Barclays Center is situated, it's situated right at the terminal of one of the busiest subway stops in the city, and I think all the teams are centrally located where their hotels are in Brooklyn. So I don't think it's going to necessarily be that big of a deal. I know that they are closing some schools up here just because of precautionary measures, and of course they don't want people out there traveling in the elements. But so far as at least these teams go, while tomorrow's attendance probably might be a little bit lower, I don't think that there's anything about this tournament that won't go on as scheduled tomorrow. Again, a lot of things too come into play with these nor'easters and with these winter storms, a lot of unpredictability. But the other thing too that these people here have is they have experience clearing these storms, unlike some that might not be used to those particular climes. Yeah,
for sure. All right, well, fill us in on today's action. 2 games in the books in the ACC. It's the play-in day, the day that you want to avoid if at all possible, unless you're Pittsburgh and you didn't win a game at all in the ACC regular season. So this is the only way you're going to get into the tournament, is that they take everybody. And the Panthers completed what you might call the imperfect ACC season today.
They did, although they showed some fight there near the end against Notre Dame, but fell short 67-64. Notre Dame, it's a different Notre Dame team than we saw play Clemson, because they have Bonzie Colson back, a much fatter Bonzie Colson, to say the least. He had 19 points for the Irish in Pittsburgh. I was talking with their radio voice, Bill Hillgrove, who also does the Steelers, and they're all kind of thankful that this season is over, and it's really just kind of a testament to the fact that Kevin Stallings just does not seem to be the fit there for the Panthers. Notre Dame, though, does advance on, and they will take on 7th-seeded Virginia Tech in the bottom of the bracket. On Clemson's side of the bracket, earlier today, it was Boston College 87, Georgia Tech 77. The Josh Pastner-led Yellow Jackets are done after 1 round. Jerome Robinson, the sensational Boston College Eagle, had 19 points, 1 of 4 in double figures, and that is one that Clemson's keeping an eye on, because Boston College will take on 5th-seeded NC State. Winner of that game tomorrow at 2 will face Clemson Thursday just after 2 o'clock here at Barclays.
All right, very good. And here in our state, the championship game of the CAA tournament at North Charleston Coliseum tonight. The College of Charleston hoping to punch its ticket to the NCAA tournament and playing in front of the hometown fans. I would think that that would work in their favor, but they got to go out and earn it. And it'd be an exciting time for Charleston under Earl Grant in his third year, I think, with the Cougars to get into the big dance.
And it is big for them also because of the fact that they've had to go to this adjustment period of playing in the CAA and all the traveling they've done up and down the East Coast, which a lot of those players, there's still, I guess, one or two that were there when they could just take a quick bus ride through the conference, but now I had to deal with the climbs of the Northeast and going up and down the Eastern Seaboard. But they can show dominance in the CAA if they win tonight. And that crowd last night, from the highlights I saw, that just looked like a raucous all Charleston crowd last night.
I would think so. Charleston and Northeastern tonight at 7 o'clock. And that game will be televised on the CBS Sports Network. 25-7 are the Cougars, the Huskies at 23-9. So we have got a bunch of stuff for you tonight here on Sports Talk. We're going to be joined by Bill Pollock, who will be covering the SEC tournament for us, which begins tomorrow in St. Louis. Bill, the sports director of Mizzou Nets, and covers all things Missouri. Right down the road is Jefferson City, where he resides, about 2 hours from St. Louis. So it's an easy little trot for him over to St. Louis. He'll be covering the SEC tournament and the Gamecocks for us. Will is up in New York covering Clemson and the ACC tournament for us. We got all that covered for you tonight. Plus, we have got football galore. We'll hear from USC running backs coach Bobby Bentley, who met with the media today to update the goings-on in his meeting room with his very talented group of running backs. There's nothing slight about the South Carolina running back core. They got some good players. They've got some older players now. They're all proven. Plus, Caleb Kinlaw is having a good spring, and he's excited about what he might bring to the table. And they've got one of the freshmen in who looks pretty good, Fenwick. So they got 5 guys on scholarship that they are well, I guess Kinlaw is still a walk-on. They've got 4 guys on scholarship right now, and another one coming in the summer. So they'll have a full room of running backs. You can never have enough good running backs. But the one thing he wants, and what he said today, he wants somebody to snatch that job and be the man. He wants somebody who will be the go-to guy. They don't want to be a running back by committee. They want a guy to be the guy. And when it's 3rd and 2, that guy can go get him a first down. Now, whether that's going to be A.J. Turner or Rico Dowdle, who was out of practice today with a slight injury. Brian Edwards was out of practice as well. He hurt his, I think his arm or shoulder earlier in a practice. So he was out of practice today in a sling. Again, nothing serious. But back to Bentley, he wants somebody to kind of be that dog among those running backs who can go get them a big first down.
The first order of business is you think it's Rico Dowdle, because he's the most versatile of them all. Good receiver out of the backfield, can pick up the blitz, has the size to pick up the blitz, and he's played the position of quarterback. It's something about a running back who's smart enough to make that little step or adjustment to help his quarterback out, and Rico Dowdle has that. And plus, it may sound trite, but A.J. Turner is a good change of pace back, but he is so valuable on special teams. You want to keep him fresh for the special team.
Their special team should be loaded with the return of Deebo Samuel and A.J. Turner back as well. So we'll hear from him. Also tonight, Clemson defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who spoke with the media for the first time yesterday after practice about his decision to return to school for a 4th year. And his information was he wasn't going to be a first-round pick. And he took his time. He did his due diligence. He talked to a lot of people. He was very deliberate in his process. That's why he went all the way to the last day. He was not going to rush things. We'll hear from him. Also, Kerry Tharp will talk some NASCAR and more on the upcoming ACC and SEC tournaments. Frank Martin and Brad Brownell previewing their first games in those events. We got a bunch for you tonight. 800-956-7266. If you want to share a thought, we'll be right back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Back we are, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic up in New York, Professor Tom Hayes alongside here in Columbia, along with Brian Leonard. 800-956-7266 is our phone number, open for spring football talk, basketball tournament talk, recruiting questions as well. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. And so we're waiting on Clemson to get up to New York. We'll hear from Brad Brownell coming up in just a little bit. What was the atmosphere like today around the Barclays Center and building towards tonight's game? Did any sense that an ACC tournament is going on right there in Brooklyn?
I can tell you right now, Corn, it's about as empty as I've seen this building, and I've seen a Brooklyn Nets home game. So, and I've also seen Islander weeknight games as well in this building underneath the misplaced banners of Dennis Potvin, Mike Bossi, and Brian Trottier. But it is something that, again, like I said yesterday, to be able to get the airspace that is the New York media and the New York sports talk scene, and the ability to get inside that area for teams that might not necessarily have a national following outside of Duke and UNC, that's basically what this tournament and having this tournament here is about. Now, tonight would be basically what you would call the main event for a lot of people here locally, because this is Syracuse's at least first and possibly only game in the ACC tournament as they take on Wake Forest in the game that will tip off here at 7 o'clock. So you will hear a lot of fans here for the Orange, a very highly partisan crowd will at least be part of that. And from that perspective, of course, you look at the Syracuse fan who will come in here and at least, normally in a normal year, this would be a big attraction because they're a prominent team and they're prominently spaced. But here, obviously, with them only being a double-digit seed, probably not a long stay for the Orange.
Well, if things go the way the ACC probably would like it to go, Will, you get Syracuse to win tonight, and that puts them up against North Carolina in the night game tomorrow night. I would imagine that would create a good deal of energy. Now, we've got Notre Dame playing Virginia Tech at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Not bad. Boston College and NC State will be playing in the second game of the day tomorrow. That probably won't generate a whole lot. Florida State, Louisville will be a good ball game, Will, to tip things off tomorrow. So as we progress through this thing, the matchups, of course, get better. The excitement level should pick up.
And I just look at the secondary ticket market prices as they go throughout the week. The prices today obviously were rather paltry with the exception of the night session here with Syracuse. They start to kind of accumulate tomorrow with the games that are being played tomorrow. You mentioned the matchups, obviously a lot more attractive in that regard. The one thing that's interesting, though, is the tickets for Clemson session are still very, very much available and highly reasonable if you're still thinking about coming to New York, because you're looking at the two matchups, the Virginia matchup, which will take place before Clemson against either Florida State or Louisville, and then Clemson's matchup with either NC State or Boston College. While Boston College is close here, not exactly having the kind of season that we expect fans to travel down here. So people who might have bought their tickets probably trying to unload them. The night session is what's getting a lot of pub for Thursday, because that is the first appearance of Duke in the ACC tournament, and a possibility of also seeing North Carolina if they can get past the Syracuse Wake Forest winner. North Carolina would take on third-seeded Miami. So the night sessions here are the ones that should bring the high drama and attention from that perspective.
Yeah, Duke has made a few Final Four runs coming through the other side in New Jersey.
Yeah,
and this will be a little bit different for them, but a lot of sidewalk fans for Notre Dame, North Carolina, and Duke in that greater New York area.
Yeah.
And some of the fans will get a kick out of seeing Buzz Williams strip act as he sweats, even if the temperature is below freezing. He'll be perspiring at the Barclays Center.
All right, couple of quick items here. The SEC Coaches Postseason Awards came out today. USC's Chris Silva named first team All-SEC. Also, he was named to the All-Defensive team, and he was the co-defensive player of the year along with Robert Williams. of Texas A&M. The first-team All-SEC squad, Jalen Barford, Arkansas, Chris Chioza of Florida, Yante Mayton of Georgia, Kevin Knox of Kentucky, Cassius Robertson, Missouri, Grant Williams, Tennessee, and Tyler Davis, Texas A&M. See anything missing from that first team? Nobody from Auburn. No. Auburn loaded up on the second team. They've got two on the second team, Bryce Brown and Jared Harper. No one from the co-regular season champs making it onto the first team All-SEC team. Interesting. The coach of the year, Rick Barnes of Tennessee. This is picked by the coaches. You know, I wonder if they hold a little something against Bruce Pearl. The coaches, that is, because of what they might think are shenanigans, things like that. Who knows?
Might be.
Player of the year is Grant Williams of Tennessee. The co-sixth man of the year, Jonte Porter, Missouri. Lamonte Turner of Tennessee. Co-freshman of the year, Colin Sexton of Alabama, and Kevin Knox of Kentucky.
That's where a team's record hurts a player because, I mean, individually, if you look at stats and his performance, Yante Mayton probably was the best player in the conference this year, but his team did not play well, especially the point guard position. And so that cost him some votes, I think.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, 800-956-7266. Couple of other quick things. Obviously, you know by now USC baseball canceled against Appalachian State in Charlotte tonight because of the rain. If they're able to find a makeup date to play this season, they would do so. The game would not be in Charlotte. Also, USC playing North Carolina A&T tomorrow. That game time has been moved from 7 until 4 because it's supposed to be cold tomorrow night in Columbia. Clemson is on with its game tonight against Wofford at this point at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Presbyterian football coach Tommy Spangler announced today the addition of former Blue Hose quarterback Tamin Garrick, Gator Garrick, as an assistant coach. He will coach the quarterbacks with the Blue Hose. And let's see. From Gamecock football today. As I mentioned, Brian Edwards out with a shoulder injury, expected to be okay. Return time is not clear. Of course, they lost Chad Terrell to a torn ACL in practice the other day. We mentioned Rico Dowdle being out with a slight injury, nothing major. Malik Young, who just moved over to defensive tackle, was in a cast today in practice. This according to some of the reports from guys who were out at practice this morning. Shai Smith, who has an ankle injury, was in full pads, as was defensive back Tavin Jackson, who's had a hamstring injury. Both are limited. Bryson Allen Williams was in full pads, but in a yellow jersey. And defensive back Jalen Dickerson was in uniform, but also in yellow and no pads. All right, let's go to John in Columbia. Jump to the phones here quickly on Sports Talk. Hello, John. How are you?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Hey, I know this March Madness is coming up, with all the pools and everything like that. You familiar with that, the brackets and the pools and
yes,
picking teams and stuff like that?
Right.
Okay. Well, with Louisville out, right? Didn't they take Louisville's championship away from them?
Well, yeah, they took down their national championship banner that they won. What was that? 2013. What was that national championship? Yeah. But they're eligible. Louisville's eligible for this year's tournament. They have not been penalized for this year's tournament. You still there? I think we've lost him. Never got to your question, John. Give us a call back. We lost you there. All right, thanks for the call. 800-956-7266 is our number. We will continue with more from New York in the ACC tournament. Will Pelagic is there courtside at the Barclays Center. I, too, have been to the Barclays Center. It's a beautiful building. Saw the Nets play there one night. The thing I remember is you walk in and you walk down to your seat. When you walk in the arena, you can see into the arena, and it's a wide opening. And you don't go up for the most part. You go down into your seating area. All right, we'll be right back. We are back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as March Madness around here is off and running. We've got, of course, we had a couple of tournaments last week, the Big South and the SoCon, but the intensity picks up this week with the ACC and the SEC. The ACC is underway. The SEC commences tomorrow in St. Louis. Will Pelagic is up at the ACC, taking in everything there. Bill Pollock will be covering the SEC for us in St. Louis. College of Charleston at 7 o'clock tonight playing Northeastern for the CAA championship. South Carolina State plays tonight in the MEAC tournament, which is where this year?
Norfolk.
Against Morgan State. They play tonight, the last game of the night. 800-956-7266. Let's get back to some phone calls. We go to D in Lake City. Next up here on Sports Talk. Hello, D.
How y'all doing tonight?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I listen to your show every night coming home from work. First time I ever called. Just want to get your opinion on a couple of things. I was reading your website this morning about Staley. This is going to USC football. Donnell Staley moving to center and Bailey moving to guard. I mean, in your opinion, who you think is going to be our best, contributors coming in on the offensive line this year?
Well, I think they've got their 5 guys pretty much set, barring injury, because they moved Malik Young to defensive tackle. They took him off the offensive line. They need help on the defensive line. So you look at their offensive line right now. Blake Camper is your starter at right tackle. He did not show up well against Michigan in the bowl game. In fact, you might recall they had to pull him. Now, he was facing a tremendous pass rusher in that game, but they had to put an injured Zach Bailey out there playing on one leg to try and slow down that pass rush, and he did the best that he could. Hutcherson is in at right guard. Stanley is going to be the center. Zach Bailey will be your left guard, and Dennis Daly your left tackle. So all 5 of those players have seen substantial playing time. Maybe Camper, the least of those 5 players. So they're experienced. They've played together. It is a bit of a shuffling of the line here as they try to put the players in the best position to win. But in terms of guys who've been through it and have experience, you like that. You like having a veteran group, for the most part, returning from the previous year.
And Zach Bailey, I think, probably is your best lineman, and now he's playing the position he'll play at the next level, which is guard. He's very serviceable at tackle, but he is a tremendous guard. And they're more athletic at tackle. They should be able, when it's 3rd and 2, they should be able to get 2 yards now.
One would think.
You think our backup have much experience, or we're going to be relying on a lot of inexperienced linemen after they start in 5?
Yeah, inexperience. You're looking at Eric Douglas backing up at right tackle. All your backups are, for the most part, redshirt freshman or true freshman. Jordan Rhodes backing up at right guard. He's a redshirt freshman. Hank Manos backing up at left guard and maybe at center. He's a true freshman. Maxwell Ayama backing up at left tackle. He's a true freshman. Christian Pellage is in there in the mix some, but he's never played. Trey DeRuin is in there too. He hasn't played much. So the primary backups, I think, are going to be redshirt freshmen or true freshmen.
Well, I appreciate y'all taking this call, and I enjoy listening to you every night, and y'all have a great evening.
Well, we thank you for the call, and don't be a stranger. Call anytime. We love to hear from you when we have time to take calls. We don't always have a lot of time to take calls because we get real busy, but when we can take calls, we love to hear from you. Like Matt up in Chester. Welcome into Sports Talk. Matt, how are you?
Good, fine, Phil. Enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Listen, you were going over the Carolina pitchers last night, and they signed the kid from Chester, Jake Wright, and I see where he's at Seminole State or wherever. What happened?
I'm trying to remember what happened with him.
He had surgery, and they held him out, but he checked in early at Carolina, and, his shoulder surgery. He was a top-notch pitcher.
Yeah. I can't really answer the question because I just I don't know. I'll see what I can find out and pass it on to you. I'm just not familiar. Let's see. Let me take a quick look here at some information.
He was signed 2 years ago.
Yeah. It must have been a situation where he had some. I think he had a shoulder issue.
Right, right.
And then probably he realized that he wasn't going to be able to pitch at South Carolina.
Right.
And he chose to go on to the junior college to try and resurrect his career. That's the best I can tell you without having, real knowledge right here from the start.
Well, that's good. I see where he hit 3 home runs last week, so he must be a pretty good hitter also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for your
Thank you.
Phil.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'll see if I can find something else on him, but he's just don't know. I see stories about when he committed back in 2015, but what happened from there must be just a case where he was injured and he feels like he needs to go JUCO to try to get his career going. Hey, Will, the matchup coming up tonight, we talked about Syracuse and we talked about and Wake Forest. Wake Forest has got some good players. I love their big man. He can be a dominant player inside. And then Syracuse, last couple of years for them, not the typical Jim Boeheim type of product that Syracuse fans are used to seeing. Not used to seeing the Orange as low down as an 11 seed in any tournament.
Yeah, you're not. And again, like I said, you're going to see a lot of Syracuse fans tonight, and I think some of them are hopeful to kind of make a similar type run like their former Big East counterparts made a couple of years ago in this very city. So it's very much a contrast in styles. Syracuse is not what you would consider an overwhelming favorite in this one. Bryant Crawford obviously is going to be a big part of what Wake Forest wants to try and break that 2-3 zone. I don't know if that necessarily is the best matchup for them. We saw, of course, Clemson struggle with that, and that's the one thing that Syracuse does is that they will play that zone, especially if you're a three-point shooting team. They will stretch it out to try and take away anything you might be able to do on the perimeter. So they put a very big premium on your ability to drive the ball, and if you can't penetrate the middle of that zone and you're starting to settle for those 23 and 24-foot jump shots, that is their recipe for it.
Well, time is starting to run out on Jim Boeheim and his coaching career, right? Didn't he say a few years ago he was just going to go about 3 more years and then hang it up? I think we're kind of getting close to the end of the line for him.
That's because the assistant thought he would stay there, and then he bolted to the left coast and took the job at the University of Washington.
Yeah, but Boeheim is still planning to retire pretty soon, isn't he? Do you recall that?
I would think, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if people remember this, Jim Boeheim came into Syracuse to play guard with a guy named Dave Bing.
Huh.
And if nobody knows that, because they're not as old as I am. And remember that Dave Bing has to be in his 70s.
Yeah.
So that'll tell you Jim Boeheim is pushing it.
Well, Will, I'm doing some further research as I'm talking here, and I'm seeing what Boeheim told reporter up in this was back in September. His son is at Syracuse now, so now apparently he plans to stay as long as his son is there, his son Buddy.
Yeah, he's kind of reset the goalpost on trying, whenever he was trying to make himself leave or go. Remember Hopkins, the guy who ended up in Washington, was the head coach in waiting there for the longest time, and that was something that they were looking forward to try and maybe at least have a succession plan for him. But obviously, he still likes doing it. He still is lucid enough to be able to make that job happen. And again, he has reached the kind of stature at Syracuse that outside of anything involving impropriety, he's not going to be forced out there. They love him up there.
Oh, yeah. 72 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't look 72, though. I mean, of course, he's a guy that looks.
Actually, he's 73.
Well, he was 70. When did he have he was 72 at the start of this season. So maybe did he have a birthday?
November 17, 1944.
So now he's 73. He was 72 when he started the season. But he's a guy that's always looked kind of old. So as he's gotten older, he hasn't. That's the beautiful thing about looking old early. You don't age so quickly. This is a breaking news. UConn has won their conference,
but they only won by 14. What's wrong?
Yeah, really. May have to drop them down a line on the tournament bracket. We'll be right back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
From the decidedly more hipster side of the East River in Brooklyn, New York, the Barclays Center, ACC Tournament Day number 1 getting underway here. Will Pelagic back at the Barclays Center, along with Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes back in our Columbia, South Carolina studios. The final game of the day getting set to be underway here, Wake Forest and Syracuse. Early today, it was Notre Dame beating Pittsburgh 67-64 and Boston College beating Georgia Tech 87-77. That Boston College game significant for Clemson because the Eagles move on to take on the NC State Wolfpack coming up tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Those are the two teams possibly that Clemson could face in their first matchup in the ACC tournament on Thursday at around the same time, just after 2 o'clock here in Brooklyn. Brad Brownell and the Tigers departing for New York this evening, but before they did, Brownell talking to the media assembled at Clemson about the two teams that they could face on Thursday.
We haven't played either one of those teams in so long. It's a little bit of a, it's been a little different. It'll be different that way. Obviously, if Georgia Tech had been the team we played, we kind of just had played them, so you're much more familiar. We didn't play State with Markel Johnson, so that's a significant addition for them, and obviously, it's a significant deletion for us because we had Dante Grantham for both games. I think Jim Christian's done a great job at Boston College. I think their perimeter players are dynamite. I thought Jerome Robinson was the best player in our league in terms of productivity this year for 18 games. He and Kai Bowman and Chapman, I think, are outstanding. And, a lot of times tournament basketball is shooting. So if you get hot, you're hard to beat. So NC State's has played great. I think the last month of the season, Kevin's done a really good job with his team, and they're playing with a lot of confidence. So I think both teams are, certainly very talented, very capable, and we had very hard games. All three of the games were down to 2 of the 3 were down to last possession, so it's going to be a difficult game.
Reggie, talking about, you guys mentioned last week that maybe some guys were tired. Did this break help you think going into the postseason and having this double bye?
We'll see. We're still practicing. We practiced pretty hard yesterday, and we're going to go reasonably hard today. There's things we need to get better at if we want to, win at a high level. Obviously, the quality of competition that we're getting ready to play in these next 2 tournaments is going to be high. And, we've got some things that we've got to improve. And so we're working hard on that, as well as trying to prepare, for whoever we're going to play, whether it's Boston College or NC State. So, we'll taper back a little bit, a little bit today and a little bit tomorrow, and then try to get ready to play really well here coming up.
How different is your comfort level knowing you don't have to go into this tournament winning a game or 2 games?
Yeah, I think it's been, we talked about it really the last week and a half of the season that, we've kind of known for a while that we've an NCAA tournament team, and we've earned that. Our play in a non-conference was really, really good. We didn't have many bad outings. We had 1 or 2 games here at home against non-conference teams where we didn't play as well, and we didn't play very well in the championship game against Hofstra, but we had a lot of performances that were high level. The Florida and Ohio State wins, especially. And because of that, it set us up to, if we had some success in our league, that we could be in this position, and we did right away. And, got off to a great start, 6-3 in the first 9. And so we put ourselves in that position, and it's been nice to play the last week and a half without that kind of stress that 25 teams are probably under right now.
Those 2 teams represent Clemson's first 2 ACC victories, a 78-62 win in the ACC opener at Littlejohn back on December 30th, and then the game at BC in Chestnut Hill, a 74-70 win for the Tigers over the Eagles. Of course, the return engagement from NC State's perspective, the 78-77 victory for the Wolfpack in the game where Gabe DeVoe missed those crucial free throws, Corn. And like Coach Brownell said the familiarity aspect not necessarily there for this squad, but the one thing that they do have is that the pressure is off. They know that they'll be dancing come next week.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's something that has been few and far between for Brownell and the Clemson team since he's been there. And so they have earned this. They've played good basketball from the outset. They got off to a very good start in November and December, had some big wins. Remember, they beat Florida. They beat Ohio State. They beat South Carolina. Then they opened ACC play when everybody was down in New Orleans. If you're Clemson, remember the football team was getting ready for the playoff. The basketball team was opening up. I think it was on December 30th. You beat NC State. And you hardly even noticed it because everybody was focused on, in this state at that point, was focused on Clemson and Alabama and South Carolina, Michigan in their bowl games. So, but yeah, it's been a great year for Clemson. Hardly a down game. The Virginia game in Charlottesville probably falls in that category. The North Carolina loss, a disappointment in that they came so close once again in Chapel Hill, even though they got their revenge at Little John. They came so close in Chapel Hill to finally breaking that streak. But it's just been one good thing after another, except for the loss of Dante Grantham. I would love to see the way this team is playing now, Will, with Dante Grantham healthy and in the lineup. And you heard what Brownell said the other day after their game, and that is they would be special. They would be a special team if they had him in the lineup and able to do what he does.
I get the feeling still this is one of those ACC tournaments where we see Clemson make a run in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably this team has come together. Sometimes you say what could have been, but I think when Dante Grantham went out, this team could have gone, down the tubes. But they decided to, kind of join ranks. And I think they've become a mentally tougher team after that loss.
And I think, too, looking at this group, you can't necessarily look at the Grantham loss and wonder what could have been because they've been good without him. And I think that's the one thing that's been so surprising is that, they've had guys like Amir Sims step up. We've seen David Scara step up defensively. They have pieces. They're going to be led by Marquise Reed and by Shelton Mitchell and by Gabe DeVoe. If those guys aren't playing well, they won't be able to win. And I think that would have been the case even without Dante Grantham in the lineup. The fact of the matter is, though, they have the ability to make a run if those guys have good nights, night in and night out.
All right, we'll get back to you in just a little bit. Sounds like folks are starting to get into their seats there at the Barclays Center. Tip-off coming up for tonight's final game. Syracuse probably will have a pretty decent following, I would think. Wake Forest probably will have very few in the stands for them. It's not going to help the fact that you talk about walk-ups, not going to help the fact that it's not good weather at all. I mean, we sit down here in the South this time of the year, and it's a little windy and a little cool, but they've got a full-blown nor'easter, round number 2. They just got past one, and listening to the news in New York, they were talking about waves in the Atlantic, of course, of 30, 35 feet out in the ocean, not crashing into shore, but that kind of effect. Now, this particular nor'easter is not going to have the wind that the first one did. They said wind was like 60 miles an hour on that first one. This one's going to be 15, 20 miles an hour with anywhere from 6 inches to a foot of snow in the metropolitan area, the tri-state area in general, and the metropolitan New York area in particular. So, folks who have in the Brooklyn area who might have gone out to watch some basketball tonight are probably going to say, heck no, I'm sitting at home.
Or maybe they'll say, hey, you want to have some fun and take shelter from the storm? Go to the Barclays ACC tournament.
Well, a lot of folks up there are without power.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that, they're going to take care of the Barclays Center and Madison Square Garden and make sure if there are events going on there that the power is on and you're not going to have any sort of situation like that. You don't need, whether it's 5,000 or 15,000, you don't need that many people sitting in one area in the dark. So they're going to make sure the power is on. But lots of people in the New York area are without power. And the news I heard this afternoon was that the power in some areas won't be restored until Friday at the earliest. So it's a mess up there. But the basketball will go on, and we'll be back up to New York when we come back. We're also heading out to St. Louis after the top of the hour break.